there was some easy, this was 7:50. I'm just gonna race through some of the things we've done since today is a major watershed day, and as I said in my email. So this is the goods market, and then Lady from there, can you see?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be in the middle, but this is just like a backup, a recap. So, Keynes pointed out that this may not be the best equilibrium. So come on, walk me through this. What did Keynes suggest? Move it up. So Keynes basically said, move the line up. And why was this such an earth-shaking policy prescription? Keynes suggested move it up. This is Keynes' brilliance. And we go to this new higher equilibrium. So why higher and more jobs? And we will see that this translates to aggregate supply, aggregate demand, Y0, 750. Y higher, I think it was 825. Thank you. P0 and P. So my earlier question, so why was this here? Just move the line up. It seems so commonsensical. Excuse me, I just want to show you something here. Is this beautiful? Look at all these markers. This is how your book should look. Some of your books look very new. I have to tell you. Thank you. You just didn't do it just for effect.
I'm looking for something in there.
Good. Look for stuff in there. So here we are. So tell me, why was this such a big deal? I mean, you can say it seems obvious. Why was Keynesian policy such a big deal that you move the line from blue to red?
The introduction of government into the equation.
Yes, thank you. He said, what's the name?
Daniel?
So he said, bring government into the equation. What was the big deal about that?
It didn't have a role before in the without federally unemployment, how it affected.
What was the first part you said?
I said that because the government didn't really have any.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there was no role for government. It was laissez-faire, and we will see that's the classical world. And when we do supply-siders in chapter 10, so there are no display screens anymore. That's gone. So you can't project anything?
No, it comes down.
Oh, so that's the same one for everything?
Yes.
So there was no role for government back then, and suddenly he says get involved, have an activist government, get involved. So I'm going to take you there. And so move up here, so you go from blue to red. And so what is this policy called when you move in this direction?
Stimulus.
Sorry?
Stimulus?
Stimulus, and click on Sarah. It's also known as jump starting. So this is what the Biden stimulus will look like. This is jump starting. Biden stimulus. And what was this called when it's going in the opposite direction? We're going to see both of these. And aggregate demand, aggregate supply. So these are both demand side stabilization policy. This is where we are going today, folks. We're going to see how we move the aggregate demand out and how we move the aggregate demand back down. So here, P high, and P moderate. Inflation moderate. Y 0 and Y moderate. And so these are both called demand side stabilization policies. And you've seen all this before. And this is where we are going today. So this is like a roadmap. So how do we move the curve out, and how do we move the curve back? What's so important about this? What is this called when you move the curve back down? Yeah, but before that, we're going to talk about tapering today. But generally speaking, when you
Soft landing.
soft landing, this is a soft landing. And please make a note. This is where our world is going to be most of this year and most of this year, starting in March, and not look good. What does it do to the economy when you're soft land? What does it do to output here? It slows it down, right?
Yeah.
What does it do to jobs? Yes. So it's supposed to be just hitting the brakes. And what will it do to Biden? He's more of a headache. Poor guy. So we talk about that. More of a headache for the poor guy. And so this is where we are going to be here, and where most of the planet is going to be. So I'm going to take you there. So how do we jumpstart? How do we soft land? We need more tools. That's where we are now. All right, so this is the backdrop. This is the roadmap. Okay, so increasing our sophistication. So we're now building a model. Stop me at any time if you have any questions. Every time you ask me a question, 7 people at least will secretly thank you. So I figured out that's the magic number. So stop me anytime. Also give me a chance to put masks of every kind in here. All right. So we did Y is C plus I plus G. We double clicked on C. We had C is C bar plus BY plus BW. We went through that whole discussion. Real quickly, why is the consumption function so important?
Because it is 70%.
Thank you. What's your name?
Little.
Mittal, thank you. That's a biggie. That's the turkey on the Thanksgiving table. Ham for them. And so, consumer confidence, C bar is consumer confidence. W is what?
Wealth.
Wealth. So when the stock market corrects, when a housing price is correct, when your cryptocurrency corrects, that goes down. When all that stuff goes up, that goes up. And Y is national income. That's basically the rate at which the economy is growing. And B, what is B in plain English?
Consumption rise per dollar.
Thank you. What's your name?
Solomon.
Solomon, thank you. So basically, it's the marginal propensity to consume. It's how much is it for Americans? How much? 0.9. So very high. It was around 0.55 in World War II. So as each generation moves further and further away from, from the Great Depression, from World War II, from stagflation, as things get better in life, generations spend more, save less. And so the MPC is baked in. It's cultural. It doesn't really change. So it's 0.9 for Americans.
Is higher education included that? Like, I'm trying to think of like the similarities. So like the U.S. is so high compared to Europe, but like most people in Europe have free education, so they don't pay for hundreds of thousands of student loans. So is that number like also taken into effect? in
So
there?
keep in mind, this number here pertains to the percentage of the increase in your income. So,
Okay.
so it's the increase, so in other words, whatever your economy was, and you jump-started it by $1 or €1, how much of that will you turn around and spend?
Right,
So
but like
that-
turn around and spend on education too.
Yeah,
Like
and
that's
so,
included.
yeah, so please know that when we look at this consumption here, those are great questions. This consumption here is discretionary consumption, as we may have said last class. It's not eggs, milk, potatoes, Rutgers. It's, should I buy another house, vacation home, car, replace my fridge, replace my roof. So it's discretionary where you have a choice or not. And I know, I taught in France over a period of 9 years, and that's a really big deal for them. You know, having said that, the average tax rate that my MBAs, my French students paid, single student, in 30s, 20s, over 60%.
Wow.
So I said, so, 60%. And so I said, is that crazy? I said, Professor, they said, yeah, but we get the TGV, the high-speed train, we get the college, we get a doctor visiting our homes for like $15. We get tons more holidays than you Americans, and they certainly do, And so they say, it's kind of a compromise. Having said that, none of my top students, even my top students, got good jobs. So there was job creation was an issue. And so where would they go? They would go to Japan to translate manuals or to do some IT work from French to English to Japanese and stuff like that. So because it's lifelong employment there. So once you're hired for life. So we talk about that. So we talk about the Eurozone later on. Okay, so we did that last time. Then you click on I, and here we are stated in that. I is I bar minus Fi. And so I bar was investor confidence. I is the interest rate. What's this minus sign all about? Come on, in plain English.
The higher the interest rate, the less investment there's going to be.
The higher the interest rate, and so the Fed is going to be pushing up the interest rate soon. Capital investment goes down. Why?
Cost of capital is higher.
Exactly, it's simply more expensive to borrow. That's it. It's very intuitive. That's just they're remaining very intuitive right now, and throughout the course. When interest rates are lowered, capital investment is supposed to go up. When interest rates are pushed up, capital investments are going to go down, and we will see today, this is how the Fed is going to slow the economy next month. They've been talking about it, they've been warning everyone about it, they've been late about it. Finally going to hit the brakes and raise interest rates and start slowing things down because inflation is a problem. For the first time in 32 years or whatever, inflation is back. 1982, 1981 was the last time we actually worried about inflation. So, this semester is a whole new kind of semester. Inflation is in the story. Well, inflation was conspicuously missing for all these years. Just a second. So we did the liquidity trap. I explained to you how, even though interest rates were zero, the algebra should show you that as interest rates are almost zero, capital investment should go up. Capital investment was borrowing by companies. For capital investment, which is factories, offices, housing is in here for you. And so then we said when interest rates are low, capital investment didn't go up. And why? What was the explanation?
Investor confidence.
Louder, please.
The investor confidence.
Yes, if investor confidence is also low, it cancels out. Remember I gave you some numbers in class? Are you staying with your notes? So that was called the liquidity trap. And so where I'm taking you now is this. So how are interest rates changed? And let's get into monetary policy. Interest rates. So I brought you back up to speed. So let's get into this gentleman Mittal, go ahead.
So, we are increasing, the interest rates will increase, but I think we discussed last time, right? So when interest rates increase, you get funds from other countries which come to your country. So will interest rates go down because you will probably get more funds from China and all those countries?
Excellent. Hang on to that comment. Don't lose it. We'll swing back later on. Short answer for you. It depends. Like, you know, this question is when interest rates go up, right? We saw in our first class how capital came into the country, right? So store that away. Then I showed you something like this, hot capital. Remember that hot capital outflow? Demand for loanable funds, supply of loanable funds. This used to be an exam question. This is I0. And so massive hot capital outflow. And look at this. Interest rates at high spike. Remember we did this in class? But look, interest rates are higher now. Capital is rushing out. Shouldn't capital come rushing back in like we did in National Savings Identity? Remember in National Savings Identity, I1 went higher than interest rates in the rest of the world, right? Domestic and foreign people came over and converted the money. Well, in the hot capital, interest rates went up, but capital's going out. What the heck is that? How does, it should be, what? It's confusing, yeah.
Long-term expectations are not high, so if there's something to invest, you can buy
Yeah. Come on, guys. You see the question, right?
I mean, in the country that it's in, it's not a safe haven, so capital's rushing out.
Thank you. Listen carefully, folks. So let me write the question down. Mittal, you had to ask me that, right? See, it's got me going now. It's an exam question. It's a question. So in hot capital outflow, as interest rates spike, shouldn't capital flow in? And the important thing here is the causality. Please understand here that here interest rates spike because of capital outflow. So capital has flown out first and then interest rates have spiked. Capital outflow due to some non-safe haven issue. So it should be very important to distinguish between interest rates being higher because of increase in demand for loanable funds because of government borrowing, like we saw in chapter 3, or interest rates going up because capital is running out the door because of something bad that's happened. You see? And in chapter 10, we will call this the identification problem because you see something, interest rates going up, and you don't know if it's this one or what we saw in chapter 3, demand for loanable funds, supply of loanable funds. Look at this. I0, I1, and this is when we're issuing bonds and doing all kinds of good stuff. Remember that in chapter 3? So you see interest rates going up, but what's the story? Is it this story? Or is it this story? And it's macro, it's called the identification problem, when you have to figure out, okay, rates went up now. Is that because demand for loanable funds went up, or supply of loanable funds went down? Are you getting this, folks? And so this is a consequence of capital running out. The example I like to give is that at 3 o'clock at night, you hear some sound downstairs in your house. And you don't know that the front door is open. And you don't know if your kid has taken the dog out, dog wanted to go out, or there's an intruder in the house. The door is open. You see what I'm saying? Identification problem. Should I call 911? Should I act like I have a weapon? Should I What should I do? Or could it just be the kid taking the dog out? Dog wants to go out at night, you know? Which one is it? You see? It's an identification problem. And we'll come back to this.
But wouldn't it be same for all the countries, I mean, right now?
Anytime you have to be very careful. So when you're in your corner office on the top floor, if I said, look, you're making phones, the price of your phone's gone up 20%, has the demand gone up for your phone? Or has the supply chain issues caused the price to go up? You see what I'm saying? That's a huge confusing thing when you're making strategy.
I kind of argued that in one of the articles that we read. I don't have it in front of me, I forget which one. I believe it was the China one, where I believe that the analyst, writing the article was kind of looking from that perspective on whether or not China would, affect the inflows, but then they identified the other countries that were still contributing into
Thank
that.
you. It's that. I hate using that PIGS term.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what was the answer to that was safe haven.
Mhm.
So that was like a quick click. All you have to do was say safe haven, Langdana will go away. Just humor me. And in the exam too, basically many of these clicks that we'll go over them in class, some of them almost trivial, like, is that all he's looking for? So yeah, sometimes it's that.
I had a similar issue with this with the homework, the identification problem, the NASDAQ article from the Wall Street Journal saying that the yield on benchmark 10-year treasury notes fell to 1.747%. I was going back and forth. I couldn't quite figure out which one it could
Did you
be.
hear, Sarah? So basically that was that the
Sorry.
yield on 10-year notes dipped really quickly. Something was happening, I think there was global chaos and capital was rushing in, safe haven.
Investors bet on faster rate increases have driven up inflation-linked bond yields seen as a benchmark for financing costs. The yield on the benchmark 10-year treasury note
Right.
fell to 1.747% Friday.
So what did you guys do for this one? So flight to safety, capital is rushing into America. Come on, but one diagram.
So the supply curve going out to the right.
That's all you have to do. Wham, wham, and wham. Interest rates. And if you look at this dollar, the dollar strengthens a bit as people are coming down. And so volcano blows up. Putin kind of puts in more tanks on Ukraine's border. By the way, Putin's not going anywhere. You heard it here first. Because the people holding Russian and Ukrainian debt, they haven't factored in any risk premium. So the rates they're demanding are still the same. So they haven't assigned risk. The smart money knows. Always look at what the smart money is doing. No invasion. They are not, smart money is not having any risk premium. Nor is China going anywhere. You heard it first. If I'm wrong, no midterm exam. I actually mean it. All this is a distraction. Look at what the smart money is doing. Yeah.
So again, going back to the same article, I clicked on the part that said benchmark 10-year treasury yields fell, and then I was reading that article which talked about how the Chinese bonds have gone up. They're kind of matching with US because some people might be
Oh, you
favoring
click too
those.
much, Anushri. Don't click too much right now. That's chapter 6. Anushri is wandering off somewhere.
So
Don't
basically, I got confused between the supply
No.
and demand.
So what happens for you? In chapter 6, we will see long-term bonds are completely different from the story. They're forward-looking. It's called the Fisher effect. So when you see risk coming in the future, your 30-year mortgages go up. Inflation's coming in the future. So they're forward-looking. So I was afraid of that.
Yeah, my question is how do you spot the supply versus the demand?
So basically what's happening is at this point on the third day, all you have to do is when there's a flight to safety in America, our interest rates fall, treasuries. People are going from stocks to bonds. People are getting out of the stock market here in America, going into our own bond market. Foreigners are saying, back in the treasuries till the Ukraine invasion's over, or till whatever, Evergrande is over. So, just to practice flight to safety. Okay, so we did the liquidity trap. And stay with me now. We are going to talk about interest rates and the subprime crisis, and we're going to maximum power.
Professor, flight to safety, is it across the, I guess, the maturity curve, like all maturities of, debt or
No,
demand, or just
no.
short?
And his question is, when people come in, are they going to 1-year bonds, 10-year bonds? Short answer, no. Longer answer, chapter 6.
Okay.
For a variety of reasons.
Sure.
If we are going to have deficit problems, then you want to make sure you're in the right kind of bond. You know, TIPS is good, since it looks like you're in this world. Inflation protected securities.
Yeah.
If you bought gold, hang on to it. No ETFs. I'm talking of gold. Okay, stay with me now. So we are building more sophistication, so we can do demand side stabilization. How interest rates change. And I know some of you have done macro, so bear with me here. Some of you are seeing this for the first time. Early money supply diagram. Here's money market. Here is money supply. These are supply of green pieces of paper. This is controlled by the Fed. So for the first time, we see the Fed, or the central bank. Where is Eric? Eric, so how is Turongji doing? Turongji.
He ended up making the soft landing on the Chinese economy.
Yeah. So money supply controlled by the Fed, money demand. And right now these, thanks to your question, this is I0, this is very short term. I promise you, you'll learn all about long-term, short-term, medium-term interest rates. Very short-term interest rates. These are overnight rates, and they are called federal funds rates. So please note, this is all that the Fed controls. Don't give the Fed too much power. You know, the Fed, I'm going to assign you a blog I wrote. The Fed is going to get its mojo back this year. The Fed, back in the day with Greenspan and Volcker and people like that, when the Fed met, it was a national event. It had more attention than a royal wedding back then. Then the Fed lost its mojo. Oh, the Fed met today? Did they? Well, who cares? Liquidity trap. They can bring rates to zero, nothing happens. Who cares? And there were Fed chairpersons were not dramatic personalities. You know, Volcker was 6'7", cigar blowing, he bullied everybody. Greenspan was strange. Had his own, you know, green speak, as they called it. In my office, there's an autograph picture. You can come upstairs someday. And so here we are, they only control the overnight rates, short-term rates. The Fed doesn't have much control over your mortgage rates. That will be controlled by expectations of inflation in the future. It's endogenous. The really important rates, long-term rates, are endogenous. Having said that, here it is, overnight rates. Here is money supply. Let's say this is 3%. And the Fed wants to lower interest rates to 2%. So what do they do? Keep in mind, this is all that the Fed can change. This is the money supply, which is the supply of green pieces of paper in the economy. Just look at this diagram, forget the economics. Which curve in which direction?
Reduce demand.
That's all the Fed can control.
Shift supply to the right.
So what do they do? So money supply to the right. What is the Fed doing with the money supply? A right moving to the right is what?
Increasing.
Increases money supply. So this is how a central bank increases money supply, and within about 20 minutes it can lower interest rates.
Are they literally just printing money to do this?
You know what? What's your name?
Greg?
Greg? So Greg said, are they actually printing money? And you know what? Before 2008, Greg, I would get all condescending and weird and patronizing, and I would say things like, Greg, we don't do things like that. You know, and people in France would roll their eyes like, oh, there he goes again. Oh, amazing Americans, you know. And I love the French, man. I love them. And so, but I can't say that anymore. So back in the day, I would say, we are not Argentinians, Brazilians, Mexicans, Israelites, Zimbabweans, you know, go on, Venezuelans. We don't do things. We have discipline. Oh my gosh. We printed more money than all of them put together. I'm taking you right there now, in a few minutes. Yeah, it's like a macroeconomic twilight zone. So Fed increases the money, and in chapter 11, we actually go into how they meet, how they vote, all that. This takes about 20 minutes, so this is 2%. So how do you increase the money? Let's hold off on that printing money comment. But how is it supposed to be increased?
Either buy government bonds, buy securities.
So basically, thank you. So I'm the Fed, and these are 4 private banks. Bank A, B, C, D, okay? And I'm the Fed, and on a Tuesday I decide there's a Federal Open Market Committee, chapter 11. And we decide, okay, we gotta go to 2%. We're gonna jumpstart the economy, make it easier for people to borrow. So let's increase M. In 20 minutes they can do that. So this in plain English, this is what happens. I'm the Fed, and I tell Bank A, could you please sell me $1,000 government bond? Thank you. And Bank A has to play along. And so I give you 10,000. How much? 10,000?
10,000.
10,000. The 10,000 is backed by what? Gold?
Faith.
Silver? What is it backed by? What?
Treasuries.
Backed by nothing. Since 1971, nothing except the strength and safe havenness of the country. No more gold.
Would that include the tax credit as well?
This is it. So we're going to talk about cryptocurrency soon. So nothing but the strength of American institutions or the country's institutions. All right? Safe haven. And remember, we have the safest game. Still, yes, no? Okay, Bank B, thank you. And I give you 10,000. Bank C, 10,000. Bank D, please. Thank you, 10,000. Bank D is not excited about this transaction. And so what happens now? All these banks have 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. It's all electronically done. Money backed by nothing. Suddenly now, what's your name? Jessica is coming down the street here. She wants to borrow 10,000. All these banks now have 10,000, 10,000 extra burning holes in their pockets, right? In the morning, the rate was 3%. Now here comes Jessica. What will they do? They all need to unload that money so they can, what will they do? Here she comes. She wants to borrow 10,000. In the morning it was 3%. What will you do?
Lower our rates.
Yes, you go, Jessica, 2%. Jessica, 2%. Milton goes, Jessica, 2%. And they compete, and the rates fall to 2%. This is how rates are reduced. Buying and selling these treasury bonds, these safe treasury bonds. Soon we will see junk coming soon when we print money. Just for effect, since the more important one is the opposite one, when the Fed raises interest rates, tell me in plain English, what's the language? 4%. Higher, coming soon. What's the language? What do I tell banks? Bank of Mittal?
They need to give the cash back and sell the bonds to the bank.
So basically they need to buy the bond back. So Mittal, here's the bond, 10,000. Where's your wallet? 10,000. And Mittal cannot say, bro, it's not a good day at my bank. I kind of don't want to do this. By law, you have to. There is no way. You have to play along. This is called these are called open market operations. Open market operations. And if you're interested in this sort of thing, go ahead, run ahead and read chapter 11. Okay? And so Bank A, take the bond back please. Thank you. 10,000. Thank you. And 10,000 and 10,000. So take the money away. And now here comes Jessica. And she goes, I need to borrow. What do they tell her?
5%.
What?
5%.
You're adding one more? You had 4 now. Jessica, stay away from Bank B. The regulators are going to visit them soon. So 4%, basically they'll say, where were you yesterday, Jessica? Where were you this morning? Sorry, I got to lend you at 4. I don't have any. So Jessica says, I'll go to Bank B, Bank C, Bank A, and then go. We all have the same problem. And so money is sucked out of the economy, and interest rates go high. This is where we're going to be from March onwards. Okay, stay with me now, and I'm going to give you a diagram that is in no other book. So let's go to even maximum power. Let's talk about the subprime crisis and COVID. What happened in COVID? And I think I should say what is happening in COVID because it's still not over yet. So watch carefully now. This diagram is in no book except ours, of course. Here we are. Draw this like this. So let's talk about the subprime crisis. And then today, COVID. So let's start with this mess here. It's almost like we've gone from one calamity to another. All right, so what happened here? Subprime crisis. Few quick sentences.
A lot of banks issued loans, bad loans to
Louder.
people with
Louder so they can
a lot of banks issued loans to people with bad credit, and those loans were backed by bigger banks. So as people were not able to pay those loans, it transferred.
Thank you. Let me take over. So basically we lent money to anyone and everyone of any amount. Long story short, the Clinton administration meant well. There were good intentions. They wanted people to be able to afford housing. So they threw away all the safeguards. Back in the day when I bought my first house, somebody saw how much I made. Then somebody calculated my monthly expenses, and I think it had to be, 1/3. And then they decided to lend me. And I was happy at that time out of grad school to take a 1-year adjustable mortgage. That's all I could get. That was then. So in 2007-8, we threw away all those requirements, and you could get liar loans, no doc loans. You made up your salary, no documentation. And so we lent money hand over fist to anyone. And so here we are, lending money all over the place. And I'll never forget, I had a guy who owned a mortgage company in my class. And he said, Farooq, he was talking back, he said, Farooq, during the subprime crisis, at one point I was lending $1 million a day. And I said, my gosh. And he said, I didn't break any laws. They left the doors open, and people like me ran through. No laws were broken, bro. And we were in the old building then, campus, and there was a hot dog guy outside. This is on the way to the library. And he said the hot dog guy has better regulation than on us lenders. We are not breaking any laws. And I said, what did you do, man? He said, in 2 days, I moved the money, I sold the mortgage to somebody else. He said it was like a game of musical chairs. He said those mortgages were rotten. We all knew that. So you don't, when the music stops, you don't want to be standing up. Musical chairs. And so what did we do? We lent money, liar loans, no doubt loans, and then we chopped them up, those bad mortgages, and we mixed them with the good mortgages. And we created these bundles which were investment bundles called CMOs, collateralized mortgage obligations. Collateralized mortgage obligations, CMOs, which were great. They were high yielding. Policemen in Wales had their retirements in there. Hedge fund managers loved them. You could get insurance on them. It was the party that they thought wouldn't end, you know? And that couldn't last. When interest rates went up, those people who were barely and the mortgage agent in my evening class like this said, Farouk, I couldn't do it anymore. I would get somebody coming in and saying, see this house, 5-car garage. My wife is driving me crazy because my younger brother has a 3-car garage. And she's saying, aren't you ashamed? How can you be a man when your younger brother has a 5-car garage and we have a 3-car garage? I said, man, so garage is a status thing? I don't know. I'm a simple man. I don't know. And so get me in. And so the mortgage person said, I can get you into this mansion at $1,200 a month, but in 3 months it's going to be $2,400, and in 6 months $2,700, and it's going to go up really quickly. And people would go. She said, yeah. And 1 year I'm going to flip this baby and show my brother and get my wife off my back. And so she said, Farouk, I couldn't do it anymore. I stopped selling them because I knew that story was gone. And so what happened is when we raised the mortgage rates, all these people barely making the mortgage payments for those massive mansions started falling from the trees. And you know those bundles that we call collateralized mortgage obligations? I call them bags of oranges. When you buy a bag of oranges, no matter in which country, in France, in Spain, back in India, in Costco, you always find the same thing, which is what?
Few bad ones.
There are a few bad ones, right? You mix them in, right? And so that's what I call them, bags of oranges, the bad mortgages, good mortgages. And so what happened is, when all the interest rates went up, those bags of oranges started rotting. Those bags went bad. People couldn't afford to pay. They were falling from the trees. And so there were trillions and trillions of rotting oranges. So stay with me. What did we do? Ben Bernanke, also known as the anti-Langdana, by the way, Ben Bernanke bailed them all out. 48 billion a month, we bought them. And there you go. How did we pay for them? Printed money. Just banged it out. We bought it's called asset purchase. You know, the central bank was purchasing these assets which are rotten and printing money. Let me show you. Here we go, folks. Right here, this is 0%, which is like the bottom. Here you go, money demand, and here we are, folks. We printed money supply, 48 billion a month. And then after that it went to 24 billion. So right here and all this here, so you can't technically go below 0%. This is all this money, gazillion trillions, and this is called quantitative easing. You will not find this diagram in any book except this one. QE, And we bailed them all out. And all this money, I call this toothpaste money. Why do you think so? And by the way, COVID hasn't even come yet. This is pre-COVID. I might run out of board space. I might try that other board sometime. That works great, by the way. Okay, so this is called toothpaste money. Why? This is what I call it.
Can't put it back in?
Yeah,
You, wow.
can't put it back in.
You cannot put it back in. Toothpaste, easy to get out, but you cannot put it back in. You know how some mornings when you're stressed, you squeeze out a whole lot, and then if you're like me from Asia, from India, or China, we're trained, you cannot waste anything. So then you're like looking at it going, what do I do now? Do I put it like in a paper towel, or save it, or just jam it in my mouth? I had it just last week. I'm like, oh man, toothpaste money. And so here we are. All this liquidity is out there. Please keep in mind, this, a large part of this is driving the bubbles. I promise I'm going to take you into the bubbles, maybe today. So be very careful. If you're in the stock market, if you're in cyber currency, if you're in the housing market, it's not just real demand, it's the liquidity. It's like water. It has to flow somewhere. And I'm not saying it's all liquidity driven, but these massive jumps in indices, stock markets, cyber currencies, whatever, significantly fueled by all this money that's sitting there. And no one knows how to suck this money in. How will you suck this money back in? What will I go and tell Sarah here? Sarah, those rotten oranges I bought from you, suppose I want to do this number. And I say, Sarah, can you buy the oranges back? What will she do?
No.
She'll say no. Mittal? No, he'll say, call security and say, there's a weird professor here with this crazy bunch of oranges. Could you send somebody over? They're dripping all over, they're rotten oranges. No. So we don't really have any idea how we're going to suck this in. And I'll never forget, folks. Quick story here. We were in the old building last year, and I was working on my book, one of my editions. Oh, on that note, there's a new edition coming out next month or month after. Do me a favor, if you see typos, there are still typos, I know. Could you let me know, please? I think I've caught them all, but you will actually be doing me a favor. Just if you see them, please send them to me, because I'm going to be proofing the new edition next month. I'm going to make sure I have caught them all. So I'd really appreciate it. I'd be grateful. So I'm working on the book, and the owner of the 8th largest hedge fund in the world, with only 12 or 16 members, clients, 8th largest. He's on the board, by the way. All right? He comes to my office, 2010, I think. And he says, Professor, you know, what a country this is. And I'm just minding my own business. I'm in my book, subprime crisis, yeah. And he said, Professor, what a country. You know, I was ready to go bankrupt. Everything was gone. All those oranges, he was left holding trillions. And he said, guess what? There were 2 of his people there, you know, hanging on to his every word. And he said, guess what? Ben Bernanke, Professor, God bless him. He bought it all off from us. What a great country we live in. And I'm going, oh man. So I was about to go under. And earlier, I was in Iowa, Idaho. I used to do a lot of pro bono speaking across the country. Now I have an issue with my knee. I'm not mobile much. So I was there just a month before, and in Idaho, and I had people jumping all over me. They were saying, Professor, how do those guys, those $10,000 suits, get bailed out? And we here, I had a corner grocery store, and they had to shut it down because I was 2 months late in my mortgage payment. And another people, South Carolina, wherever, Idaho, Iowa, I don't know. We lost our home, Professor. Medical bills for my wife, again, 2 months late. And how do these guys get bailed out? And then he's pointing to me. You Northeast economists, you $10,000 suits. I'm suddenly a $10,000 suit. So I said, all right, okay, let me stop you there. Langdana is a Macy's Memorial Day. So, as you can see, fashion and Langdana don't come in the same sentence. I know. And I say, I'm the guy, before you nail me on other things, let me kind of stop you right there. I'm the guy when it says take 15% of the lowest possible price. And Langdana's looking, oh, that one's lower. My wife goes, you're gonna wear that? Sweetheart, no, she said. Anyway, and so that's me, no 10,000. And so that's when I realized that we were being taken to the cleaners. And I want you to read, open your books please. Well, I'm going to read it out for you in case you didn't bring your book. Chapter 4. Okay, page 73. And that's the diagram there. And that quote is from Confessions of a Quantitative Easer. And please make a note, it's on your Canvas website. I really want you to read it, it's a classic. And this gentleman, Andrew Hazar, he's one of the guys who ran this operation. So when this article came out, my phone, my email went crazy. They said, Langdana, you aren't just some crazy conspiracy guy just getting angry. This is the guy who ran this operation, one of 4 people, and he's saying, he's confessing to it. And he's a Rutgers fellow, by the way. You know? And so here's what he says. This is the guy who ran quantitative easing. We went on a bond buying spree that was supposed to help Main Street. Instead, it was a feast for Wall Street. This is Wall Street Journal. The man is a pariah now. Nobody talks to him there. I'm sorry, America. As a former Federal Reserve official, I was responsible for executing the centerpiece program of the Fed's first plunge into the bond buying experiment known as quantitative easing. This diagram, which you will not see anywhere else. All this down here, below 0 is QE. And more is coming in COVID. The central bank continues to spend QE as a tool for helping Main Street. But I've come to recognize the QE program for what it really is. The greatest backdoor Wall Street bailout of all time. Because what happened is, these guys borrowed money for 0, then they lent it out at 6%. And then they gave themselves a party at the end of the year with monster bonuses. And the best year Wall Street ever had, that's the next paragraph, ever in the history of Wall Street, ever, was 2009. Yeah, you borrow at 0, you lend at 6. And then the second best year Wall Street ever had was 2010. Ever. And so that's when I woke up and said, okay, we are being taken to the cleaners here. And this was vindication, because in 2007 or 8, I had figured out, talking to that hedge fund guy, that we were being taken to the cleaners. That's QE. You've got to read that article. And then comes COVID.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, had they have delayed the postponement of increasing the interest rate, would it have negated the bubble, or would it have just postponed that as well?
No, so what happened? Right now here, at this point, in here, the bottom is falling out. And what I will argue later on, and for you now, we had to bail out some early on. But not for 7-8 years. Long, I mean, and the thing is, I know we shouldn't have, and the guys involved are talking about the backdoor bailout. They're saying, sorry, America. And the hedge fund guy in my office is going, Professor, what a great country. That was a real $10,000 suit. Each button was probably $1,000. It really was shiny, very shiny. Anyway, and so here we are, then comes COVID. So then we tried, please note this here is called the taper. When you try and decrease monetary growth. More soon. You've been hearing about the taper a lot lately, yes? So, we tried to taper a bit. Here comes COVID. Can you show me this diagram? COVID, the Fed bought assets which are junk bonds, basically junk, at $160 billion a month. If you're wondering where all those stimulus checks came from, where all the help for restaurants came from, why there are some people in the Wall Street Journal going, all right, enough now, okay? We gotta stop now. So here we are, 160 billion a month. Show me here. Show me COVID here. Yeah.
Keep going to the right.
Wham. Good thing we're on a real whiteboard and be scrolling sideways on my Zoom. So 160, and March 2022, time to taper. Good luck to them is all I have to say.
So Professor, the interest rates never went that negative.
No. Remember, they never are going. This negative is not. They will stop at 0. So this is the lower benchmark is 0. This is theoretical. So that's how you will see 0.5, 0.01. The Chinese economists actually calculated, and we went down to minus 7.5 if you were to extrapolate. So it was 0. And so that's COVID. Massive. So right in here, this funded all our vaccinations, stimulus checks, stimmies. Some of you invested in GameStop, hotels, restaurants, etc. Relief for mortgage, rent, mortgage payments, all that stuff. So it's like an early look at quantitative easing.
Professor,
Yeah.
what was like the date range, or like when we attempted to try to start the taper, but then
So-
COVID hit? Was
so-
that like exactly 2019, 18, or was that?
Yes, yeah. So for 2015, if I remember right, October 2015 comes to mind. It's probably this one on my new edition. So 2015, 16, 17, what was happening? And for you, what would happen here if we start talking taper? What will happen to all those carry trades? Remember, money at 0% in America was sent overseas when the interest rates were 7, 8, 9%. So what happens to all that money when this country starts saying, all right, we're going to start tapering and pushing rates back up here? What happens to all those carry trades?
Stop, it'll come back.
So they start coming back. And so around 2015, 16, there's all this ruckus and drama when capital was coming back, getting out of South Africa, Australia, India, and coming back to the US. So I'm just going to stuck that in there, quick discussion.
So how did they get rid of those bad bonds and everything? So
Beautiful. He's wondering aloud, so what happened to the rotten oranges? Mitter, guess what? You and I and all of us here, we own them. We own them. So I think eventually what we'll do is we'll tell banks that don't, because if this money is lent out, right now, please know, most of this is sitting there. If this money had gone in circulation, we would have a hyperinflation. Because on liquidity trap, we just kind of went into some bubbles. The sky didn't fall on our head. So I'm going to take you into Bernie Sanders' modern monetary theory. But all this money just sat there. Because I bar was so low, C bar was so low. And so it's dangerous. If confidence goes up and we start borrowing all this and spending it, we've got a problem. So now we own it. And the Chinese own a lot of their stuff. You heard of Evergrande, so they got their own similar problems.
That's a question. Even though they increased money supply and giving those stimulus checks, wasn't it part of the theory that those people who got those checks eventually going to spend it back into the economy?
Thank you. So please listen carefully. This is like a jump starting here, right? Aggregate demand 0, AD 1. And so please understand, the stimulus check was not meant to jumpstart anything. The stimulus check was just to keep oil in the engine. So big jumpstarting is going to come hopefully with the Biden stimulus plan. So the stimulus checks, even though they were horrendously large, that was just to keep oil in your engine, so the engine wouldn't freeze and shut down. So the mortgage, people who own houses, rents, vaccinations, they were free for us. And so that's what that was. So people say, well, big stimulus checks, they didn't jumpstart the economy. What the heck? No. They were just a little oil in your engine so the thing doesn't lock and freeze. And we are in a rich country, we could do it. And we can print money here. Other countries cannot do this. Other countries can't even do distancing. There are too many people. And spacing, we take so much for granted here. So how was that? Okay.
So Professor, like interest rates are rising and like Biden's plan, they're funding more money, so it's really going to make the situation much worse because of that.
So I'm going to, there's a lot of that is coming. I'm going to take you there. So that man needs a lot of good luck and your prayers. And a 4-leaf clover. He's Irish, he's got some good luck. So he has to dig out his 4-leaf clover ASAP.
Why did interest rates go negative, or did they? If we shifted the money supply out so much?
Because that's like the bottom 0%. So you can't have bonds paying negative, but effectively they were negative. So that's like the bottom.
Well, some countries did have negative interest.
That's different. That's when you actually charge the banks to park money at the Fed. That's a different story. Real quick, and then I'm going to show you how we start moving. Yeah, go ahead. I'll clear the board.
So this increase in money supply, wouldn't that weaken dollar in the forex market?
No. Answer his question, somebody. Louder, please.
Inflation.
So he said, why isn't the dollar getting weaker?
It does.
Remember, here we are, the whole planet is in COVID or in subprime. Yes, who said that? And what is that? What's the Langdana theory called?
Cave
The
theory.
cave theory. And we are so lucky. So when the whole planet has a problem, fine, we are cool. If some other country is looking good, then we have some serious issues because capital is going to go there. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but that's what happened. So subprime crisis, COVID, we were at 12% deficit GDP ratio, 5% is the limit, and dollar got stronger because the cave theory. Okay, let's now see chapter 5. Let's start figuring out how we jumpstart. Let's see the mechanics. This will still be more of an overview chapter. So please look at chapter 5, table on page 84. So right here at the board. And again, from the book, you're only responsible for stuff that I have covered. Okay, so here we have so how to shift the aggregate demand. Here we go, is the goods benefit. C0 plus I0 plus C0 plus H0 minus input. That's the goods benefit. So how do we jumpstart and how do we soft land? And let's get into it. So let's look at table. I'm going to write it on the board if some of you don't have it. Michael, can you read out the columns to me, please? My glasses, I can't see.
Column is Y, value of output. C, I, G, export minus import, Indian output and jobs.
Okay, so just give me the numbers, please.
Under Y, you have 625, 750, and 875. Under C, you have 475, 550, and 625. Under I, you have 50, 50, 50. Under G1, you have
So here we are, it's G1 or G new, if you like. So we've gone from 125 to 175. Last week it was 125. Let's change colors. And now we are spending 50 billion. Here is the Biden stimulus plan minus all the filler. So finally he's convinced Cinema and Munchkin, who's the other guy? Munch, yeah. So 175 has convinced them. So this is delta G is 50, right? Yeah. So we've increased 50 billion, fixing our bridges and our highways and doing some cyber defense, that sort of thing. So here we are, that's the G new, and it's, what is exports by this one? 25, 25, 25.
And 725, 800.
Thank you. And so what we have here is C plus I plus G new. And here is the Biden stimulus plan. And I should tell you seriously, if you're removing all the filler, it's actually a good stimulus plan. It's mostly Obama 2.0, as I said before. And Obama 2.0 didn't go anywhere. By the time he got it right, Obama 1.0, the big stimulus, was wasted. Only like 12% went to good stuff. The rest he gave away to the states who wasted it. I was in Hillsborough then, and they bought Hillsborough. Anybody from Hillsborough? The only crime in Hillsborough is overdue library books. Occasional jaywalking on a bad day. And so they had Hummer 3s, a fleet behind the library. I said, what's with the Hummer 3s? I said, oh yeah, we had a budget. No, we got funds from the stimulus plan. And K9 units, SWAT teams. I said, man, is it that serious? I should return these books on time. You know, they're gonna wipe me out as soon as I show up. Put the book in the bin. Fleet, wasted. Then Obama 2.0 was a great stimulus plan, but boom, blocked here, blocked there. Couldn't do anything. So Biden's is really Obama 2.0, the good stuff. So let's see what should happen. What is it now?
725, 800, and 875.
And see what happens here. This is one of the more powerful things from Keynesian economics. We increased government spending by 50 on the Biden stimulus plan. Where is the new equilibrium in the goods market? This is quite kind of remarkable. here we are, here we are. This was 750 last time. G0, this is delta G is equal to 50. And what's the new equilibrium in this economy? What do you see here? Come on, Anushri. Yeah, that's a good idea. If you can make little nameplates, that'll help me too.
You just move the shift of the line, right?
Yeah, so what's the new equilibrium?
It's that red.
Yeah, so what's the number?
800.
Is it 875?
875, right? Remember, they both should be equal. So this is here. Here you have y is equal to c plus I plus g mu plus exports minus imports. Right? What's equilibrium in the goods market? And so 875. So what is the change in GDP here? $875 minus 750. That's 125. Look at this. So the economy went up by 125. This is a very powerful feature of the Keynesian model. And the government spending on our bridges and roads and all was 50 billion. So what happened here? Look at this. The economy went up 125 when government spending went up only 50. And Keynesians, this is the inner temple for Keynesians. Please note, if you are doing macro in University of Chicago or Rochester, this will not be even shown to you. They don't believe in the Keynesian model. I mean, if I were to lecture there like this, a SWAT team would come in. Little red dot on Langdana, bang, gone. Drag me out. Seriously, I'm not kidding you. Well, not the SWAT team, but they don't teach you this. So look at this. There is a multiplier effect. Famous Keynesian multiplier effect is equal to change in GDP over change in G. That's 125 over 50. That's 2.5. Can you explain to me what's going on here? I mean, you spend 50 billion on fixing the bridges over the Raritan River, widening 78, fixing New Jersey Transit, which is an abomination. How is the airport? Has Newark Airport been fixed again?
Working on it.
Still working on it? Does the monorail work or depends on the day of the week?
Yeah.
Building a new one. Where?
I think.
Okay. All right, so there you go. But then you spend 50 billion and the economy goes 2.5 times. What's going on here?
Well, if you do the infrastructure to fix the roads, the companies you hire to fix the roads need to invest in more machinery to be able to do that. And they need the people then to work on that, which increases consumer spending because their incomes go up.
Exactly. Did you get that? So what we have here, thank you, Jessica. So what we have here is you spend 50 billion. What happens to the construction company? Let's say that this lady here has got a construction company and you spend 50 billion. And so what does she do? What do her employees do with that 50 billion? They'll go to the shore for a vacation. I didn't hear you. You said something about China?
Sell the contract to China to build the road.
No, not anymore. With Biden, by the way, if you're serious, large infrastructure contracts have to be domestic.
Yeah, I mean, I have a, how does the formula show that? I get the logic that it's pretty.
I'm going to show you all that, but let me finish the logic first. So her construction workers will spend something on going to the shore. How much? The MPC. Remember the MPC? So let's talk about it. Let's look at the chart on page. What is this page number here?
That's 85.
Page 85, please, directly at the bottom. Thank you. since you asked for the formula. So here we are, time period. So initially, let's use the same. So addition to income, so you spend 50 billion. And again, this is highly controversial, by the way. There are people who will get out and walk out in discussion like this. Supply siders would say, okay, Langdana, this is crazy. Do you know how much of this government spending will be filched? Do you know how much of this G is going to be stolen? Do you know that they will leave the real money they make is when you see all the equipment lying unused and idle? That's where they're making the real money because the meter is ticking. That's actually true. That's where the real money comes when you say idle equipment. Come on, Langdana. Let me go one step at a time. So, let's be optimistic. So addition, we do need the bridges kind of fixed. I'm a civil engineer, trust me. Our bridges need fixing. Bolts should not be falling on the car from the overhead girders. As we saw lately, what happened? Addition to income, so we spend 50 billion. Okay, so let's calculate the MPC. I'm gonna clear this board here. Before we go any further, we take a break at 7:30. Hang in there, please. Okay, so calculating the MPC here. What is the MPC again in plain English?
How much do you spend for $1 increase?
How much do you spend if your income goes up by $1? That's the additional spending based on the additional increase in income. That's change in consumption over change in national income. So how do you calculate it? So look at this here, folks. When your income, this is national income, this is output, this is national income. When your national income went from 625, here, look at this, please. When your income went from 625 to 750, your consumption went from 475 to 550. So when your income goes up by $1, how much will consumption go up by? So simply we do 550 minus 475 divided by 750 minus 625, and that works out to be 0.6. So in plain English, what does 0.6 mean? So basically for every increase in dollar, you're turning around and spending 60 cents. And for the lady who asked me that European question, once we do something called ISLM in chapter 7, we will look at what benefits there are. How much government spending on education. We get a better idea. We need more tools for that. Just store that away. And so in this story, it's 0.6. And you would get 0.6 no matter what you do. This minus that, divided by this minus that. It's all linear. So you get 0.6. So for $1 increase, in this country here, they turn around and spend 60 cents. So now, this lady's construction company, how much do they turn around and spend at the shore of this 50 billion? How much is the MPC? 0.6. So this lady's construction company got 50 billion. How much will they turn around and take their families to the shore? How much will they spend?
30.
0.6 times 50. Here you are 30. So now this gentleman here has got a whole bunch of hotels and bed and breakfasts at the shore. How much will he now, from this 30, use to renovate his rooms, fix the swimming pool?
18.
Okay, so. So 18 gets pumped back in, and on and on and on, and the final is 125. And this is how the Keynesian multiplier effect works.
So it starts out like with the highest, and then kind of.
0.6, 0.6, 0.6. And remember, for the American economy, that's 0.9. Okay, so 0.9, 0.9, 0.9. The greater the MPC, the more the power of the multiplier. And for the gentleman who likes that formula, for you, multiplier is equal to 1 over 1 minus MPC. So 1 over 1 minus 0.6. That works out to be 2.5. Okay, so just a second. So in high spending countries, you have bigger multipliers where people are consumers. In parts of China, India, even United States, like Maine, they don't spend anything up there. They sit and read, they sit on rockers, and listen to the radio, they have hot chocolate, you know, that sort of thing. Florida, they spend like crazy. And so the MPC is actually higher in Florida compared to Maine. Or in parts of China, Beijing, Shanghai, it's crazy. You go 20 minutes outside these big cities, they're not spending. So it's very asymmetric, but here you go. Here's your formula if you want it. And this is the beauty of a multiplier effect. One important comment. This is a big hot potato here. This G, when you talk between Democrats and Republicans, this is a hot potato. One group, I'm being very careful here, will say this G has got to be roads, highways, defense, power grid, security for our internet from hacking. Other group will say good G should include unemployment benefits, welfare, Medicare, Medicaid. You see where I'm going? And so it's a hot potato. This is where the friction suddenly builds up. What is good G? And so I'm very careful here. As far as I'm concerned, good G is G that is spent on us. I'm going to dodge that hot potato, but it's a big hot potato. This is where Biden's problems are lying now. Should Biden include benefits for single parents, for more unemployment benefits, for preschool home care? One group will say yes, another group will say no. Defense, R&D, innovation, infrastructure only. So, this is a click, it's a politically sensitive thing. Right now, it's good G. And Keynes didn't help, by the way. Keynes, I could tell you more about him. The guy, before he met this Russian ballerina called Lydia Lokobova. Before he met her, he was obnoxious, he had attitude, he was basically a jerk. After he met her, he changed completely. Fell in love, wrote poetry. And so when he came up with this, he hadn't met her yet. She was a Russian ballerina. And so they said, how should this money be spent, Mr. Keynes? And he said, he was all exasperated. And he said, I don't know, dig holes, fill them up. I don't care. He was being sarcastic. And so you had earlier Obama 1.0 people going, when the Obama stimulus happened, they actually said what Keynes said, dig holes, fill them up. And I went, no, he's being sarcastic. You know, everyone doesn't understand sarcasm. You know, some countries don't do. In the American South, I went to Virginia, there is no sarcasm down there. Out here in New Jersey, New York, it's only sarcasm. Right? If you're late for a meeting, somebody will go, hey, you're on time, good job. You know, down in the South, they'll go, so rude, so rude. In France, where I was, no sarcasm. In England and Ireland, only sarcasm. You wear an ugly tie, somebody will go, oh, that's a great tie. You know? And so big holes fill them up. He was being sarcastic. So anyway, good G, multiplier effect. Let's take 15 minutes. Before that, there was a hand somewhere. Somebody had a question here.
So the PPP stimulus, so essentially, that went to small businesses, but because it was for wages and health insurance and stuff, it was meant to stimulate C, right?
So please understand, this is to jumpstart the economy. This story here is to do that, okay?
Right.
In COVID, when I said keeping oil in the engine,
Got it.
that was to prevent this baby from going.
Got it. Got
That's
it.
what they were doing. They're hanging in there.
Got it.
By the
Got it.
fingernails. That. So you can take your kids to the doctor, so you can put food on the table.
Got it.
Let's take 15. Thank you.